Pastor Brian from Summit Church here. Last November, I attended a Zoom training session for pastors on the subject of small groups. At the beginning, the leader asked a question. For each pastor there, he wanted to know what percentage of the folks who attend on Sunday are also connected to a small group. Now, I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I didn't know the answer to that question for our church. So I did some research in December to determine how we're doing in this area at Summit Church. I shared the results with all of our small group leaders last week at a training session I had for them, and I want to share it with the entire congregation now. Small groups are the topic for this week's edition of Wednesday's Words with Pastor Brian. The vision of Summit Church is making lifelong followers of Jesus who become more like him every day. And we have a three-pronged strategy for accomplishing that vision. The first component is the 5 habits. These are about each one of us taking responsibility for our own walk with God. I can't walk with God for you. And the 5 habits are simply practices that Christians have been doing for centuries to foster a close and vital relationship with God. Now, the second component is small groups. One of the first things Jesus did when he began ministry was to form a small group. We call them the 12 apostles, but it was essentially a small group. Now, small groups are an important element of discipleship because we have spiritual needs that can't be met in a setting like the Sunday worship service, where we often have several hundred people in the room. Small groups are where relationships are built and individual needs are cared for, and we have dialogue and discussion around God's Word. The third component of our strategy is reaching out to others with the gospel. I'm not called to reach the entire world for Jesus, but I am responsible for some. And research shows that for most Christians in America, that's about 8 to 15 people. At Summit, we want to equip folks to reach the 8 to 15 people God has placed in your sphere of influence. So we have the 5 habits, we have small groups, and reaching others. You know, when you walk in our sanctuary, those 3 images on the wall, they say grow, connect, and share. Those are these same 3 components of our strategy. And I believe that someone who is practicing the 5 habits, who is connected to a small group, and who is being used by God to reach others is very likely to remain a lifelong follower of Jesus. And God will be molding them more and more into the image of his Son. Well, that's a quick review of our vision and strategy. And as you can see, small groups are a vital part of it. We have 3 components, and small groups are one of them. So how are we doing? Here's what I found when I contacted the leadership of all of our small groups. We currently have 17 small groups at Summit Church. Some are attached to a specific ministry, like the young adult group. Some are home groups with a mix of couples and single folks. Some are gender specific, like the women's Bible study or men's Bible study. And I included the moms group that Tiffany Amick started last year. That's a small group that provides connection for people in a specific stage of life. Now, there are 219 participants. 200 of those are from Summit, 19 are from other churches. And when I went through the list of people, I found that 28 people from Summit participated in more than one group. A lot of these are folks who attend a women's Bible study or men's Bible study, and then also are part of a home group with their spouse. When we account for the folks from other churches and the duplicates, we have 172 distinct individuals from Summit who are connected to a small group, and that represents about 77% of our Sunday adult attendance. 77%. Over 3/4 of our congregation is connected to others at Summit through some form of small group. And this doesn't include people who are connected through serving in ministries like Worship Team or Awana. We're doing really well in this area. I didn't know that when I attended the Zoom call last November, but I was really encouraged 6 weeks later when I finally arrived at the answer. And I want to encourage all of you with this news too. Now, it would be really easy to sit back and go, aren't we great? We're really knocking it out of the park here. But the fact is, we have some work to do. And the reason is that we have new people at Summit almost every week. I had 6 people RSVP'd for the welcome lunch 3 weeks ago. It was canceled because of the snow day, but it wouldn't surprise me if we have even more people when it takes place after church this coming Sunday. One of the hardest parts of my job is when new people come to Summit, they really like what they see here, and then they want to join a small group, and we struggle to find a place for them. Now, sometimes that's because some of the current groups are full. There's just a limit to how many folks you can jam into a living room. But another factor is that it's often hard to add new people into an existing group of folks who've been doing life together for a number of years. I think the best way is to launch new groups as new people come up. With the current stream of visitors who come on Sundays and then attend the welcome lunch, we could probably launch a new small group at Summit every 2 to 3 months. But here's the rub. I don't have leaders just sort of sitting on my shelf back there that I can pull off the shelf and start a new group. I'm always looking for leaders and seeking to multiply. So where do you find leaders for new small groups? The best place is in existing small groups. I challenge the leaders of all of our current small groups to look at their members and identify a co-leader who could then start something new. Some of you watching this video may be challenged by your small group leader to start leading on occasion with the goal of starting another group in the near future. Leaving a group that you love and starting something new, that's a sacrifice. I get that. But don't you want more people to experience what you have in your group? That's what our visitors want. And we can help facilitate that as we multiply. So let me close with this. Summit Church is doing really well with our small group ministry, and Summit Church has some work to do with our small group ministry as we seek to provide places for new people. Both of those statements are true. So be encouraged and consider how you can help us expand this ministry to connect more people into the community of believers at Summit Church.